We like to answer your questions here on the Beyond the Garden Basics podcast and newsletter. Charlie from Brooklyn writes in, and he has a question about a peach tree he has, but it's not your normal peach tree. He says, this peach tree is from a seed. One of the gardeners asked me to plant it. Is it worth it just to have another tree for the birds? If it is, should I cut it off at the height of my knees like Ed Laivo says to do? Well, let's ask Ed. That would be Ed Laivo from Ed Able Solutions on YouTube. He's always posting videos about fruit trees, a fruit tree expert for probably since Ronald Reagan was president, I think.
Before Ronald Reagan.
Since Jimmy Carter was president.
Yeah, I've been doing it since Bob Carter.
All right. Well, let's tackle Charlie's questions here. Now, the picture that you see in the newsletter of Charlie's peach tree looks to have a bit of girth to it. It looks like it's probably a 2 or 3 year old peach tree, and he sent several pictures. And looking at the area where the roots are, I do not see a bump that would indicate that it has a rootstock. So truly, this is from a peach seed. What happens, Ed, when you plant a peach seed?
Well, it's anybody's guess, but simply put, it depends on the parentage, and because of that, it also then depends on the parents' and the likelihood that you're going to get something that's going to be even closely resembling what the parent plant was that gave you that seed is pretty slim.
Yeah, and first of all, let me explain Ed's audio quality. He's in his pickup truck, so that's okay. We understand.
Out the field, sampling fruit.
Good for you. What are you trying today?
I'm actually evaluating genetic dwarfs for a video that I intend to do, but I'm going to go over and actually do a video this morning on Arctic star nectarine. So that's where I'm headed right now.
All right, because the nectarines are already ripening here in early June?
Oh, for crying out loud. Yeah, there's nectarines that were ripening in May this year that, when my, over at the Zagers, I've been looking at nectarines for at least the last 3 weeks.
Let me explain the Zagers. Zager, started by Floyd Zager, is Zager Genetics, and despite their name, everything they're doing is hand-pollinated. There's no gene splicing going on there. But Floyd, the late Floyd Zager, for years and years and years, basically tried crossing just about every fruit tree imaginable with something else until he got something exciting. If you enjoy pluots, you can thank Floyd Zager for that.
Yeah, most of the interspecific hybrid fruit that's on the market today has some lineage traced back to the Zager family and Zager Genetics. So, and I've had the privilege of working with them now since the late 80s, early 90s. So, and they're very close friends. So, yeah, so I really am on top of what your listeners' challenges in terms of hybridization, because I watch the Zagers producing upwards of 20 and 30,000 crosses a year and planting them out and then assessing, all these different varieties every year for their market value, and then disposing of everything up to maybe 7% of that total number.
Well, not only were they picking and choosing among the varietals, but they were picking and choosing among all the rootstocks they used.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah. You have to, once they determine that a variety has some promise, then they want to take and test it for things like pollen compatibility. They want to test it for disease resistance, cracking resistance, relative to rain, some climate adaptation. And then, of course, like you just pointed out, Fred, its ability to grow on the popular rootstocks.
All right. So with Charlie planting his peach tree from seed, there is no specified rootstock. It's growing on its own roots. When it comes to peach tree rootstocks, what are they usually bred for? What sort of value do they have?
Well, the rootstocks have two different values, typically, primarily, and that's disease resistance and soil adaptation. And soil adaptation could be subcategory climatization as well. The idea is that the rootstock has to make the tree perform in the soils that the tree is planted in. And typically, most seedlings, like Charlie's dealing with, have the mixed parentage of all these other different contributors, and the likelihood that that rootstock or that its root is going to be compatible to all situations is also slim. It may perform in some, but it might not perform in all. And it might not be resistant to a disease, but maybe tolerates sandy soil or clay soil. But maybe it is tolerant of disease, but doesn't tolerate clay or sandy soil. So, I mean, the rootstock gives the grower the consistency to adapt whatever their soil conditions are and their disease pressures are to their climate.
So if Charlie wanted to up his luck factor when it comes to planting this seedling peach tree, the soil he plants it in would be very important. So I guess it should be some sort of mix that isn't too much sand or too much clay.
That's up for debate anymore. I used to be, pretty much saying, hey, if you got a good sandy loam, you can plant anything. But, there's the home garden has kind of just been a different school for me for over the last 40 years. And I can tell you that, when you're dealing with all the different challenges in growing fruit in the home garden, the idea of creating the perfect soil just doesn't exist.
So, but at the very least, I would think you would want to start off a questionable tree like Charlie's in well-drained soil.
Correct. Well-drained would be top of the list, Fred. So that's a very good point.
All right, so let's try to increase Charlie's chances of getting something from this tree, this seed-grown peach tree. Obviously, growing it in full sun would help. The more sun, the better. Maybe, maybe not. It really depends what its parents are, and we have no idea where this peach tree came from or which variety it is. Maybe Charlie can hunt it down and get some parentage, but again, it's up to the bees that were pollinated the flowers. Because it's not the fruit the tree will produce, it is the seeds that are inside that piece of fruit that determined what that bee did whenever.
Correct. And one of the things, though, that you said, did you say he's in New York?
Yes.
Well, that's kind of cool. And you said his tree's roughly about 3 years old. Is it in a container? I didn't look at the picture.
It's resting in a container. I can see the roots. Perhaps he pulled it out, but it came in what looks to be about a 10-gallon container.
Okay.
And
all right.
It looks to be about, I'd say, 5 feet tall with full leaves.
Yeah. So here's the thing. He's got it on its own route. I agree with you. You create a situation, where you can plant the tree out and you can explore, let it fruit. Here's the thing. Some varieties aren't even going to fruit, or there's also the likelihood that it won't fruit for 3, 4, 5 years. That's the other, one of the things that Zegers run into quite a bit is that, the time factor, how precocious, the precocity of a tree is very important, meaning that if it doesn't set fruit within the first 2 years in the Zegers collection, it's gone. It has to go because that really doesn't work out for the commercial. It also doesn't work out for the home gardener in most cases, too. If you think about it, people don't have that much of a tolerance for non-productive plants in their yard, nor should they. I don't believe they really should. Not that we can isolate and choose varieties based on their precocity. We can offer that to the public so that they get fruit off of that precious piece of property in their yard sooner. And Charlie doesn't have that guarantee because he doesn't know what the parentage is. So here's my recommendation. My recommendation is toss it.
Okay.
Yeah, you can edit that if you'd like, but keep in mind this, that if you get lucky, and let's just say there's a 90% chance that you won't. Okay, like let's say 70 to 90, just to cover those people that are listening to your show that go, Ed, you don't know what you're talking about. So here, 70 to 90 covers me, but that you won't. Okay. And that means that the remaining is bad odds that you probably are going to waste a lot of time, possibly a precious space in your yard when you could go out and get a great variety, anywhere. But my second recommendation would be go find a friend who has a peach tree in their yard and bud or graft that variety onto it and then test it that way.
Ah, good. And there are extensive grafting instructions online you can find about how to do that. And at least you'd be testing it on a rootstock. But if the tree is a productive tree, chances are it's the right rootstock for that area.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And, that's the way to really kind of get acquainted with a rogue seedling like that and not really dedicate. When you're talking about the Zager's test blocks, their test blocks are 20 acres and 30 acres, and to get that 7%, that may very well turn into 3% that actually are going to turn into sellable trees. So it's a really, really expensive, very labor intense project responsibility being a plant hybridizer. And I try to point that out on my edible solutions page because I do a special with the Zagers regularly called All New at Zager Genetics. And I try to emphasize how much work and dedication this family has to coming up with wonderful fruit for the home garden and for the commercial growers.
And they've been doing it for a long time. And truly, it really depends on how long do you think you're going to live? Because as you mentioned, a seed-grown fruit tree might take 7 years to develop fruit. And that's not that unusual among seed-grown fruits, is it?
Not at all. And it's funny because it really is the case with apples. Some of the more popular apple varieties, even not seedlings, grafted varieties of some of the great heirloom varieties like the Spitzenberg, for instance, they can take upwards of 6, 7, 8 years before they'll give you one piece of fruit. And that's even grafted onto a precocious rootstock or budded onto a precocious rootstock. So the parentage thing is very, very important. The idea that it's got notoriety that dates itself back to the 1700s, like the Spitz, gives you at least some hope that other people have determined that this is the greatest piece of fruit and it's worth waiting for. But when you've got something like a seedling that came out of a peach from your friend's house that, has been a family favorite of theirs for years, and you're going to see whether or not you can get the same thing, that falls into that percentage of the odds being so much against you that I don't think it's really it's worthy pursuit.
If you're young enough, you have patience and perseverance and enough land, give it a try. But for the
I love it. I love it. If you're young enough, man, go for it. If you're young enough, hey, what did you call me? You said Ed Laivo, who doesn't like to try new things. Now you know dang well that that's not the case, especially the younger Ed Laivo. I mean, I've tried everything in the world and to grow it and also to explore it. And you do that when you're young. When you're our age, you settle down with everything you've learned and are comfortable with, and it makes you happy.
Well, let's talk about that specific instance of where I accused you of not being the old Ed Laivo anymore and not willing to try this. I was discussing the honeyberry, sometimes called the haskap, which is sort of a blueberry, raspberry, blackberry cross that grows very well in colder climates of the United States and around the world, Japan and Russia. But it doesn't do well beyond USDA zones 5 or 6 and is adversely affected by the heat. But the people who live in the cold country look forward to their, shall we call it a blueberry substitute, the haskap or the honeyberry. And I had to ask you, well, Ed, have you ever tried it? And it's like, I was told it won't grow here, and I got blueberries, so why bother?
Yeah. And my attitude, and mind you, I've worked with, major suppliers from the Midwest to the East Coast, through the Southern Seaboard. I'm very familiar with the honeyberry. And the idea is this, is that once you get above zone 5, I mean, even to some degree, zone 5, once you get above zone 5, the things you can grow become very, very, very limited. And so the fair comparison for a home gardener, that's in upstate Michigan is not going to be, haha, you can't grow blueberries. It's going to be, hey, I grow these wonderful honeyberries and, I can't grow the blueberries, but these satisfy, and there's nothing to compare to them here. I think that's a fair assessment myself. Honeyberries in California suffer not from the heat, they suffer from the low humidity and the heat, which is very, very much a problem with the blueberries in the northern high bush for years, and we couldn't grow them here until the southerns came in. It's all relative.
Well, let's point out what you just said about your fruit palate is greatly reduced beyond certain zones. You mean actually below certain zones, don't you?
Yeah, below. Yeah, below.
You mean below zone 5. All of a sudden, you'll enjoy honeyberries.
Correct.
But not a peach tree.
I look at it as above in the United States because I'm in California. Yeah, you're right. In the lower zones, that's where it gets to be a challenge. And, we don't do great with apples in California. Isn't it ironic? But it's not because apples don't love our climate. It's they hate our lack of humidity. And they sunburn and they just get terribly damaged. The trunks get burned. And so apples have never, ever been a great crop here because of that. But we get high sugar on our apples. It's just that they're typically sunburned with a big giant yellow spot on them or a brown spot on them. They taste fabulous.
Well, let's clarify that a little bit because California has a lot of growing zones. And in fact, wasn't Sonoma County at one time known as the apple capital?
To a certain degree, certain varieties grow really, really well up there. And of course, we do know that, like Yellow Delicious is fabulous out of there. And so is Gravenstein. Gravenstein made Sonoma County. But I think that even in Sonoma County, you can have, the closer you get to the coast, the more you get higher humidity. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So the more you get conducive weather conditions to grow great apples, and but you still get like fire blight pressure because we don't get enough cold to suppress fire blight here. This is not apple country. Let's just put it that way. But I love the apples are my third favorite category of fruit would be apples.
Well, the only way that could happen is if you were tasting some California grown apples.
I do it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So there are varieties that do okay here.
They are. You have to drive around in the truck with me and then tell me that. I'm searching through a tree to find a decent apple, and then I get one, and it's it's fabulous flavor. But the sets aren't good. I mean, we have really random sets on different varieties of apples here. Keep in mind, it's not Fuji, Gala. Fuji does fairly well here at Sunburns. Gala does really good here. It kind of comes off the tree before the extensive amount of heat damages it. Granny Smith Sunburns here, you don't want to pick it up until it's, kind of on that yellow side anyway. So the yellow spot that it gets when it's green is not as evident if you're harvesting it at the right time. When you take all those commodity, Honeycrisp will abort here. It'll just drop on the ground if our dew points drop so low and our temperatures go high. Honeycrisp aborts. So do a lot of other varieties just abort. They'll drop the whole crop because of low humidity.
Because you've said that, let's pass a message along to the grocery stores of California. Hey, people, the Granny Smith when it's yellow is really a nice sweet piece of fruit. How about waiting a bit before you bring them in?
I'll tell you. Yeah, that's a big deal for me as well. Yeah, Granny Smith is a tremendous apple if it's picked in, say, mid-November to late November. It's a great apple, and to tell you the truth, anybody who has it at that point, quickly it becomes one of their favorite late apples.
But it's not green anymore. It's mostly yellow.
Oh, yeah, no. It's got high sugar, too. It's not all carbohydrate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's starch. It's like eating September Granny Smith to me is like eating a potato.
Well, on that note, let's thank Ed Laivo of all things fruit. It's Ed Able Solutions on YouTube, where you can watch his just about daily videos about fruit trees and everything you want to know about fruit. It's up there. And Charlie, back in Brooklyn, do you have a chipper shredder or a lot of patience? The choice is yours.
Or a friend who has a tree that he can graft or bud this variety into.
There you go. There you go. And on a positive note. All right. Ed Laivo, thanks so much.
Hey, always a pleasure, Fred.